So welcome to the first live stream ever. Let's see how this works and how this works out in general. And so today my goal is to look into Fastify. Now I've never really used Fastify. I've quickly used their CLI just like to bootstrap a new app last week, but I actually wanted to reserve that for the stream and see how far we can go. Now, let me share my screen and let's dive directly into it. So this is more or less the plan which I was going to explore today. So basically this is the agenda, basically explore the Fastify CLI. So Fastify, in comparison to some other backend node frameworks, they have a CLI, which is personally always super great to get started quickly on something, especially when you're not an expert on the field. Otherwise, you could probably set it up just on your own, basically installing packages and whatever is needed. But for our exploratory phase, that will actually be great because we can just use that Fastify CLI and then get going with that. And I would like to basically dive a bit deeper into a particular area of Fastify, which is a plugin structure. So different to what, let's say Express has, Fastify comes already with some predefined or built-in plugin system, which allows you to build modular applications. And that's very much in line what I am when I'm trying to kind of break down an architecture and laying it out. Like you don't want to have such a modular, monolithic structure in one place, but you rather want to modularize stuff. So I'm going to look into how that works. And then I would like to fit this into Nx, which is part of my exploration phase here. So ultimately, I would like to set up an Nx workspace, maybe a monorepo, where we have a Fastify app. We could attach it ideally, depending on how far we come today, to some small front end just to see how those fit together. But I'm mostly interested how Fastify could fit in such a monorepo scenario, especially with the plugins, because that could nicely fit also what Nx kind of promotes in terms of modularity. And let me pull over the browser window. And the first thing we're going to go is to the Fastify GitHub. Let's say Fastify CLI GitHub. Cool, so here we have the Fastify project on GitHub. By the way, Matteo Collina, which is a fellow Italian, he's the creator of Fastify. I just had a nice chat with him last week, or 2 weeks ago actually already. Cool, so let's have a look here. This is the Fastify CLI. This is what we actually want to do. And then let's create a new Fastify app. Let me see whether I can just use this globally without having to install it. So go for npx Fastify CLI. And let's see what happens here. Oh, it doesn't look like it necessarily needs a name. Generate. Fastify app. Oh, I just saw something interesting here. We want to have a TypeScript app. We want to have a TypeScript application. We need to pass language TypeScript. Cool, so we should now already have our Fastify app. So let's explore what that looks like. All right, so what we got here is, well, obviously the package.json, which just contains a couple of scripts, I guess, on how to launch stuff. Cool, so there's also testing being done, which first compiles your app, so runs the build of TypeScript, and then uses tab. I've never used tab actually. Something you could look into in another stream. Then we have the start script. We have some building and watching going on here. I guess let's just go ahead and run npm run dev and see what happens here. Oh, well, probably didn't install node packages. No, it didn't. So let's do this. So let's just do run dev. So here, service listening. Let me pull that up. Where is my browser here? Cool. Actually, let's do something. Let's move this over to another screen and organize our stuff a bit here. And so we can see what is actually going on. So let's explore the app setup. So what do we got here? So we have an app TS, which looks like it is the entry point of this whole thing. So it loads a bunch of Fastify stuff at the very top, some custom app options. So basically some TypeScript stuff going on here. Oh, this is interesting. So this is probably for the plugin stuff, which I was mentioning earlier, which Fastify is kind of known for. So it looks like it uses a special function here, so register, where it kind of pulls in everything that is in that directory plugins, which seems to contain some of those Fastify plugins. It looks like it used the same method also for registering the routes, and then it exports the app. Let's see whether we have already some routes defined. Oh, this is the route through. True. So if you do something like this, nice. So refreshing, it seems like it's building behind the scenes. So it looks like the dev command is what we want to have. I'm curious now what happens if I do, because it looks like it builds behind the scenes, as you can see here, and then serves from that build output. But if I'm removing that dist folder there, and I just used, what was it? The dev start command. Interesting. app.js doesn't exist. So it looks like you need to first build it, and that would serve it just from the dist app. Yeah. Interesting. So anyways, we are interested in running just that dev command. So that's giving us what we want. And so now we have already some changed output here by going just into that root level TS file, which is actually such a Fastify plugin, it looks like. So let's see whether the docs actually have some info there. Because right now we just leverage this CLI to get going, which is my preferred way. But yeah, I'm kind of biased working on a dev tool. So, okay, cool. So there's a lot of things going on here, explaining what it is, why, some core features. Here's how to get started basically on your own. Create a server. I think we don't have a server in our case. And this is something which I know because I talked to Matteo last week, where the Fastify CLI, by serving through the dev scripts that we use, implicitly has a server. Because like if you look into that app folder here, there is actually no server here that basically registers the port and everything. So what happens here is you just return an application. And an application here is just such a construct. So it's basically a function that return, which like internally then does a bunch of stuff. In this case, just registering the plugins, registering the routes, and then it boots it up. But like, if you think about it, like you're probably wondering like, where does the actual booting happen? And that happens internally to that to the Fastify CLI. And we can actually eject as well. So the Fastify CLI, and let's actually try this just because we were speaking about it, so that it's clear. It has an eject command. Let me see whether, yeah, exactly. So this is from me just toying around with the CLI last week. So there's an eject command which we can run. Now, notice that I run npx Fastify CLI in this way because I don't have it installed globally. So that's my preferred way of doing it. It is actually also installed here. So in this case, it would even take the local one and use that functionality. But I usually don't install like packages globally, just because as you like play around with a lot of different tools and different versions, that can become really a mess. Even though the global npm, like the npx cache, is also not error-free. I've seen some weird behavior there as well. So what we can do basically is here run this eject command. And now you can see it mentioned here, generated server TS. And that server TS now is actually what is bootstrapping the whole thing. So you can see it does even like some low-level stuff, like, or low-level infrastructure stuff of like loading and setting up the environment reading mechanism with .env here. Then it imports obviously Fastify. And here you can see now it creates that app, such a Fastify app, also setting some logging stuff. I wonder whether you can fine-tune that or somehow influence that if you don't eject. But like what we are interested mostly in here is here it registers the actual application. So here is where it pulls in that app, which we have seen before. So this one here. And then, let me jump back here. And then that one will then load and everything will bootstrap and boot up basically. And load the stuff. And here you can see a couple of hooks, basically closing, like doing some cleanup in the end. And finally here we have the actual listening. So here you see the port or whatever you specified in your environment. And then it just like exits if whenever there is an error. It just locks it out and then closes the process and everything. So this is pretty interesting. Hey Brandon, welcome to my first ever live stream. All right, so what we're doing here is like, what I want to do, as I mentioned earlier, I want to explore a bit what Fastify looks like and how it works. Just to see what opportunities there are. Especially I'm interested in that plugin mechanism that they have. And so we just like showed the whole server ejecting functionality. I'm not too much interested into that right now. That would be more of like a deployment story, I guess. Like whenever you decide to deploy it to somewhere, like hosted in your own Docker container or something, then you would probably need to eject, unless that infrastructure supports Fastify out of the box and would have that generic kind of server running there for you. Cool. But right now, this is what we have. So how do we add this? This is just basically a JSON string here, or an object that we return that gets serialized then over this route here. We have another example here. So this is another one. I wonder how that example one is being loaded. I don't think it's going to be, oh really, it is it's folder based to some degree. So how does that work? Because here we just pull in the root level, like at the root basically of all our routes, which is because we kind of pull it in here. We get this example also being exposed. So it basically recognizes, it kind of parses recursively these type of things. So basically if we did something like this, it's at greet, and then went in here, and we can just return whatever. Let's see what it does live hot reloading. So if I go to greet, it actually works. That's pretty neat. So it has some file-based kind of routing built in. I didn't see that being configured specifically here anywhere, because it looks like here we just register and it probably just traverses it recursively. So those options right now, they're being passed in from the outside. Let me actually have a look here. Do the docs mention something about this? Routes. Guess that's a good starting point. So what is the full declaration? So this is where you load in a route. Oh, I see. You can basically also configure it. I wonder whether there is like some other they're not being great fans of file-based routing. Yeah, I think like from what I understand so far, and this is probably like you can, it seems like you can have both worlds. At least like that's what I get from reading through this, like really glancing through this super quickly. Because you have this fastify.route object where you can potentially specify how that should look like and what the handler would look like, right? And so I guess you could just pull that somewhere in, and you could really like configure it however you want it, like in terms of how the route looks like. But then there is this other way here. Let me see whether I can see here. Handling of route inside prefix plugins. Okay, this just grabs into specify like some predefined locations like routes / user routes events. Interesting. I wonder what happens if I do something like a nested folder here. Because now I in theory have greet / me. So greet just alone would kind of return this one. And if I go a level deeper, it goes this one. So yeah, seems to work. So you can really nicely nest these things together. But what if I go in here? Because like a plugin here, it looks like it's very much just a function where you can just then register your own route. So I could, I think, potentially also do something just like fastify.greet, like to get, which is a get request. Probably not this, because greet is also already at this folder level. And so I could have something like this here. And then I have just the normal async function stuff. Doesn't look like it wants this type of setup. Let me see whether the greet still works. No, it seems like I have destroyed it. Oh, I see. So method get already declared for the route greet me. Cool, it seems also to recover from errors. So it just like reloads live whenever something wrong goes. Something bad happens and the server goes down. That is interesting. Looks like it still has it from the cache somewhere, I think. Yeah. Oh, I see. So that's why we got this error. So it doesn't seem like it cleans what it has built before. So if I rebuild again now, actually let me have now the me as I had before. Because you can see that it refreshes and it builds into this one here. So now we see it built just the two of these. So if I go here, yeah, now it works. So you can really, it's very flexible. So you can have file-based, but you can also like folder-based, but you could also potentially just have one single entry point and then go ahead and like configure it however you want and have all the routes basically in one place. So that's neat. But yeah, as mentioned, like the whole thing about like if you have another file here, it doesn't seem to refresh. So if I have something like this, let me actually copy this over. And say we have something like this here. And just remove everything else. So it looks like it should have compiled this again. Now we have a test folder in here. Obviously this should work. Yeah, it works. But now if I go ahead and basically start and go and delete this one, seems to refresh here down here. So it restarts the server and regenerates everything. But the folder remains in here. So it seems like potentially a bug, I guess. Like you should totally remove that again, because otherwise like you can get those weird errors that I got before. Cool. But so in terms of plugins, this actually looks pretty interesting because that's also one piece that Matteo now in my call last week kind of mentioned. Like that's the whole point of Fastify. So you don't want to replicate what Express, for instance, does, but you rather want to have that modularity where you just like load in this stuff somehow almost dynamically. You just like specify the folders and then pull them in here. And then within each of these, you can expand the subsection of the application. And this is very nice because it is something that I've been kind of promoting also for like structural React applications or Angular applications where you like split them up into not having a single monolithic code base. So let's have a look at the one up here, whether that's something special, because there's also this plugins folder. And so here we have, for instance, what is it? Some support. There's a README, which is handy to have in here. So plugins define behavior that is common to all the routes in your application. So there's, oh, interesting. Files in this folder are typically defined through the Fastify plugin module, making them non-encapsulated. They can define decorators, hooks. Let's actually pull this over here and see what this actually is. So you can require this plugin. So this part is already there. We've seen this here in this root file. Sorry, not in this one, in the app one actually, where it's being registered here. It doesn't look like it is being registered in any different way than the routes down here, which is interesting because from what I understand, these are kind of cross-cutting. It's almost like guards. If you're coming from the Angular world, it's kind of like guards of your routes. At least like it looks like to me. Yeah, that would be interesting, Michael, to explore like what is the speed benefit in terms of like compared to Express or something. So today I would like to mostly look into like in general, like just getting started with it because I never really used it anytime before. There's well like focus on the modularity aspect of it. But yeah, the speed one would actually be interesting. That could actually be something for the next stream to see whether there's also some speed benefits there. So let me see. So here we have the register, which we have seen already. There is like inside a plugin, you can then do whatever you want, register routes. That's fine. That seems like it's mostly for like kind of like the plugin documentation. And then we have the register, like the decorator, so you can have some sort of utility here. Oh, and you just then wrap it and then call it. Fastify offers you a more elegant and comfortable way to do this using decorators. So creating decorators is extremely easy. So by using the Fastify decorate, is that the thing that they're doing in here? So if I go here to, well, this is something Fastify Sensible. It's like their plugin. Oh, I see. It sets up some defaults that might make sense. So if you have something like this, it actually returns, like it doesn't throw a complete exception, but like it returns something that might be useful. For instance, if you have like a like single page application or something that pulls that API, you get some more defined error message and stuff. Then I guess some keywords. Okay, so it looks like the sensible here is some default setup that they have. Oh, here they use the decorate method. So there's some support, which is kind of decoration method, returns hugs. So let's see whether we can find how this works. You then register this. Instance decorate util. Done. It goes downwards, so the encapsulation applies to the ancestors and siblings, but not the children. Kind of makes sense. But you have to explicitly decorate this. So you're just adding basically utility method to the actual instance. I'm not sure I 100% got what those are useful. Like cross-cutting functionality seems like ideal. Seems ideal for code generation and quickly scaffold backends. Yeah, that's for sure. Like that's the main point why there is this CLI. And that's actually something I wanted to dive into a bit even today, like in a bit. Because my goal, I've mentioned it like earlier, is like explore the Fastify CLI, that's plugin structure, which we're currently doing right now. But then also like figure out like how this would fit into, for instance, like an NX workspace. Because like this stream, I use it for exploring some of those aspects, how you could like have Fastify in an NX workspace. We have some super light support just basically in master right now. And so I wanted to see like how this fits together, because like code generation is one aspect that that basically that NX can help with. Dan DP mentions hope next stream will be 180p and with their stereo sound. Yeah, that's actually something that is also part of this first stream. I'm trying to figure out to see how good the sound comes over and stuff. So I will definitely look into that. It's a good point. Like the thing is being recorded as well. So I'm going to check after the stream how the quality is, because even my upload speed is not super great. So that is also something that you could potentially worry about in terms of like streaming. Cool. These decorates is like something I would like to figure out and look deeper. But like for now, I think like should be fine. I'm not too much interested in just going too deep into this. So let's actually see and figure out how this like could work in an NX workspace. Because one thing that like in Fastify here, you still have like one source folder, right? Like you have the plugins here, the routes here, the application here, and everything is kind of co-located in that single source folder. In NX, what I usually propose is to structure this in like an app, and then you structure this out into different kind of local libs or something like that. And so I'm curious, like, and that's what I'm going to try out now, is how would these plugins fit into such a library? Because in theory, from a conceptual point of view, this would totally match. Cool. So for doing that, I'm actually going to release a local version of NX, because we have it just in master right now. So there's that part, specifically what I'm interested in, is not released. So let me just live create a new local version. And in NX, what we do there, which could be interesting actually as well, is like we use Verdaccio or Verdaccio, or in Italian, as an Italian, I would call it Verdaccio. Verdaccio, maybe, is the correct pronunciation. So this is basically a lightweight local like proxy or npm registry if you want. And so you can basically like create a package, deploy it locally, and then have it distribute locally. And so this is like ideal if you want to do testing. And so here, for instance, I want to just figure out what is the current version of NX that we have on npm right now. So let me see. Okay, so that's 15.7 beta 3. Actually, I use, you didn't see this because it opened up in a different screen, but I use what is called ScriptKit. It's actually pretty nice because you can create some easy version of a script, like an actual node script almost, right? And so here, for instance, what I do is I literally like just query the unpackaged package.json to get the latest version and then the next version that we published under the next flag. And then I just like print it out via that diff. And so what this allows me to do, and I don't know why ScriptKit always opens up on a different screen, but basically I can just launch this really quickly and then it would show me something like this. And yeah, so I can quickly see, okay, the beta 3 is like what we have out, so 15.7.0. And why I need this is because I want to release a local version that is kind of bigger than that. So my local proxy would pick that up instead of something like that we have already on NPM. And so in NX, this could be interesting. Like if you ever want to contribute to NX, so NX is this project. So you go to GitHub, narwhal/NX or nx.dev. There is a contributing guide, a contributor, contributing MD. So where everything of this should be basically explained. So what I'm going to do here is to enable local registry. So we have a script here that does it for us. So now it's enabled, meaning that it sets all the local proxies to point to this address. Now obviously you need to start it as well. And yeah, Michael Verdasso is like super great. This made our life so much easier for local development. Even on CI, we spin it up, we deploy all the packages there, and then we run integration tests against those packages, and then we just like phase it down again. And it could even be interesting, like if you have a slow internet connection, like you can like always have that active and proxy stuff through and do some more aggressive caching. So it makes things like node installs, npm installs much faster. So what you can see now here, and let me actually pull this up really quickly, is now at this port here, we have Verdasho running. And there is already some packages installed, which is probably from a previous installation, like a deployment, which I did. So there's a folder basically which Verdasho looks at and then loads stuff from. And then I'm going to release a new version. So you can see I'm already doing some experimentation here. So I have like beta 102. It really isn't irrelevant like what number I have, unless it is like it has to be greater than whatever is on NPM, because otherwise Verdasho would just proxy through this. And this NX release is just a script that we have in this NX repo. Cool, so let this run. We should get a new version. Great. There's also some weird behavior if I have this thing here split. You can see the whole live dynamic terminal doesn't behave as it should. I think I have some weird configuration of my terminal here. Just happens within VS Code, weirdly. All right. So hopefully we get some cache hits. Yeah, we got some cache hits, so things go a bit faster, because otherwise we are kind of waiting here 30 minutes now. So you can see someone ran those builds already before, some of my team members at NX. And so we get some good cache hits, and now it's deploying to Verdasho. And you can see now here the HTTP request logging on the Verdasho server. And so now as we go ahead, do we have it still open? No, I don't. We now get a version deployed there. Cool. So now we have 15.7.0 beta 102. And this should allow us now to create a new local setup of NX, like using some of the latest. And this is now based off on master, so we don't have to use any release beta version or anything. What I'm going to do is create just a new workspace. I'm using this version here just to be sure. Let's say Fastify standalone or something. And again, I'm using npx here, so I don't have to actually install anything about it. Also because this is like super, like all this card is immediately afterwards. Oh, then DP mentioned this also happens in like WebStorm and stuff. That's interesting. Yeah, it seems to happen only to me, and even only sometimes when I use split screen, like split terminals here. Does it happen to you as well in that case? Yeah, NX 618. Yeah, exactly. So beta 102 is my local version. So you can see here. Let me see whether I can. I always forget what the port of Verdasho is. Let me see. Here we go, 4873. So basically what happened here is like when I ran that release script, and by having that Verdascio service running locally, the publish actually went to that Verdascio service. And so let me increase this a bit more. You can now see if I go, for instance, to, I don't know, Narwhal Node, so Node plugin, then for the versions, we should see here our next version that we just deployed. So you can see here the 15.7.0 beta 102. So this is just deployed locally on that server. And in fact, like if I would just like switch it off, I cannot install that version anymore. You can also see like versions such as like 15.4.2 and so on. And so these are pulled down from the actual NPM registry, because like Verdascio in the end is like really like a proxy. And so if it doesn't find the package locally in his local instance, it just goes through to NPM or yarn or whatever you have configured and pulls it down from there. So that's also why you need to have a version that's bigger than the one that is like already deployed, let's say on NPM actually. I guess like if we just specify it like this as we did, we would still get like that specific version. So like you can avoid it. Oh, thanks, Michael. Just saw it now, 4873. I don't know why. I always forget what port that is, and I have to look it up again and again. All right. Dang. Let me recreate it. So what we have here now is like when I run this process, and that installs it now via the local installation of Nx on the Verdascio servers. We have obviously the whole monorepo setup, and we might use that afterwards. But right now I want to look into that new one, which is just in that version here, which is that Node server app. And the Node server app then gives me now the availability of like using Express, Fastify, which we definitely want to do today, and also Koa. I've never looked into Koa specifically as well, so that might be also something what you could do. It also asked me for a Docker file. Let's go for it right now. So you definitely want to deploy via Docker, or you potentially might want to. And I can enable like this root caching. For now, I'm just like not using that. It's just like a local demo. So there's no need for that. Actually, regarding Docker, what do you use for deployment when you use Node? Like, do you bundle things first? I had a Twitter poll like earlier today about whether you first like compile your Node app and then bundle it into like a Docker container, or even you don't do it even like those can exist basically regardless, right? But the question is like, do you do bundling on your Node server, or you just copy it into a Docker container and just like run it directly from there? Michael, how do you deploy your app? Do you have a Node server? I guess so, right? Oh, nice, Dockerizing GitHub Actions. But do you bundle it first? So do you build it such as you would do like with a front-end application? So it's running a build that produces like a single main.js file with all the code in it? Because I'm kind of back and forth on it. And that's mentioned, like I have not too much experience on back-end Node development, apart from like toying around. Oh yeah, because I use Nx. But would you want to continue doing that? Because like that's the main question. Like that, like your answer could now directly have a direct influence of how like Nx behaves in the future. So if you could wish, like, would you still want to bundle everything together? Or would you rather just like maybe have it like, I guess like you would still want to pre-compile it from TypeScript to JavaScript, because otherwise you would have to use something like TS Node or something. Which I don't think you would want to do in production, although I've seen people doing it. Nice, sounds good. Yeah, I need to reach out to more Node folks to see, because I would like to get a bigger, like some large opinion of like what people do. Because like the poll on Twitter, let me actually pull it up. I think it's almost balanced. But then if you look at it, there's like, yeah, there's some more like why bundle Docker for the world. Like, probably my poll was also not formulated very well, because you could obviously bundle and have it Dockerized, or not bundle and have it Dockerized, or basically just bundle and just pull it up on some Netlify or something where you don't even use Dockers or anything similar. But obviously my audience is kind of biased towards front-end developers, so it's not ideal. Cool. So this took actually a while. I need to check. Maybe it's due to the streaming. But now we should have such a Fastify standalone app. Let's explore what that gives us. So this is now an Nx workspace, and it is like a standalone setup, meaning that it's not the typical monorepo that if you know Nx, you would expect, because Nx is kind of known for like monorepo, so having multiple apps. So here we just really have like a new Fastify application. Let me see how the structure looks like. So the package JSON, I have some utilities here which might be helpful. There's usual Nx serve and stuff. If we open up here, we have our main TS file, and this would actually now be the Fastify server that we didn't see before in the Fastify CLI because we didn't eject, right? So Fastify has this built in, but I guess most probably you always eject. I don't actually know, because like if you want to deploy to some environment that doesn't support Fastify or has a particular adapter for Fastify, you would always need this, where you would have to basically run this Fastify app, create it, load the app in as a plugin basically, and then do the whole thing about cleanup and stuff. So this is basically what that main TS file would be. Might actually be better to rename that to server TS now that it comes up here, because it's more intuitive. Main TS is like more like related to actually web apps and stuff. Like we're accustomed to have a main TS. I guess bundling was designed for poor browser, pure internet connection, so it makes sense only for front end. Yeah, that's actually exactly that's kind of the thing which I would naturally intuitively lean towards, in the sense of saying, yeah, like you just want to copy it into a Docker container and then run it from there. Yeah, Mike has brought up a good point as well about like the whole processing. Although, like I've just yesterday I've heard, I think it was even in that Twitter poll which I've had pulled up, where like the fact that even if you have multiple files, it could be loaded on demand somehow. So there would be like a faster boot up time, which like if you deploy to some like probably edge functional stuff, that might be something you want. Like if you have a Docker, like let's say you deploy well, even if you would deploy to FlyIO or something like that, you would want to have like fast boot up times. But it depends on whether your server is keeping warm continuously or whether it's kind of booting up as needed. But yeah, those are good points. To then DP again, another thing is, this is why APF so difficult in WordPress. Yeah, another thing that I have seen also why you would bundle is like for all the like that you don't have to kind of pull back like with you all the node modules. Like you would probably still need some, because you obviously have to run a node server from there, so you need some packages, but you could actually bundle in some of them. But yeah, it's something to explore, because like in this setup, for instance, here, if I run, and I can actually just do it, like if I run npx nx build, this should build my Fastify application here. And so what I get here is, you can see I got like an actual build output, like my main file here. There's the package JSON as well for installing dependencies in the node environment. But in this case, I really have like those two packages that I might pull in. So obviously I wouldn't want to bundle those into those packages, of course. And that's it. One thing that we are also, just because I see it now, the package JSON here, one thing that is also being worked on, or is actually almost ready, is log file pruning. Because one thing that has come up is you want to have fast installs, even if you bundle this into your Docker container. And so having log file pruning there makes it much faster, because like you can discard a lot of like dependencies which you don't actually use. And so, yeah, I know the Angular package format came up with that type of thing to flatten everything together. But that was a necessity back at that time, as far as I remember, to have that like faster, and being faster in terms of the compilation speed and stuff. But yeah, cool. So here, like NX right now is set up to bundle by default, but that's something I, to be honest, would like to explore a bit more. In terms of the application itself, as mentioned, like there's the app here. One thing I don't see is like comparing it now directly to the Fastify CLI is actually here to close stuff off. So this is something that would need to be looked into, in the sense of why this is. Well, it looks like it's more for what is close with grace. Graceful exiting sounds like, but exit process gracefully. Yeah, that's what I figured, if possible for Node.js. That could be an interesting addition. Something to look into potentially. Cool. But basically, to go back to our thing here, basically Nx setup is mostly similar to what Fastify CLI gives you. So we have the same app here that just basically pulls in one single route here directly. So there's no subfolders similar to what Fastify CLI had in terms of those plugins. So again, like probably pulling in that sensible defaults one. It really depends of like what it includes. I would need to look into what is within this package, but it looked very like it made sense, sensible, right? In terms of like 404s, like common return types, that type of stuff. So it might make sense to pull that in as well. But what I wanted to see here is how can we leverage loading of plugins from a library package? And so what is a library package? So the Modularity Nx is structured where you can, even in a standalone app, you can have a libs folder. You can also have like, I don't know, we could even call it something like modules. I'll actually create it here. Let's call it modules. Where we actually then host our Fastify modular plugins in there, which then each of these like could represent a different domain, and then you could implement like, let's say like the whole connect section in one of those modules and that other stuff. Very similar to, if you know Nx, like you do right now in a React application typically. So you modularize out everything such that the app really just becomes or remains the actual loader where you pull things together. So how could that work? We can just generate a new library, and let me use, I don't remember the actual syntax, so let me use Nx console here. There should be now a node library. And for those people not knowing, that follow along, like why do I have this whole generator? So there is this novel node package, which is basically a plugin that comes with things that allows you to generate code. And so having that in, there is this Nx console kind of thing, which is a Visual Studio Code extension. And currently there's also a WebStorm extension being developed. So there will be like perfectly feature parity in a bit. And so what this allows me is this command here finds all the generators that are in those plugins that I have installed. And so that's why I can here like search through them and have here a library. And so let's call this people, for instance. And I would want to have this into the modules directory. That's what we specified. We could actually have also right-clicked on that. But what you can see here, it gives you a dry run of what would happen. So we have now people entry here. Like modules people would then contain my library, basically. And again, this is just a command being run behind the scenes. So if you click this icon here, this is what is being generated. So I could, rather than hitting that run button, and I'll even close the panel there, I can just run this command basically. I can shorten this a bit and then generate such a people module. So we don't want to save this. And so if we go here now to the people module, this is just a typical library. So there's nothing fancy in here, just exports a function. Has a lint and testing. Test is here set up with Jest, as it seems. So I don't know for backend development if anyone uses it. Yeah, Nx, yeah, 618. Yeah, Nx console is like so good. It's so good. It started as a simple kind of side project, and it never really got like full priority in the sense that we worked on Nx, and then like some of us also came like pulled behind us like Nx console. But now it's actually a first-class citizen of the whole Nx ecosystem, just because it's so easy. I feel like it's like you have the framework layer, and then you have the CLI on top, and which already makes things a lot easier. For instance, like the fact that Fastify has a CLI, which we have seen here, made it so much nicer to just generate this stuff, right? So we were able to generate it, although I completely never saw Fastify before, basically, figure out what the stuff is in here. It's also nice that they have readmes directly located here. But I feel like on top of this, if you then have also something like Nx console with those generating functionality, you can just really explore, right? So here, for instance, we can really explore like what are the generators and plugins that we have. And then just go in here and say, hey, we could actually generate a node application. So what parameters do we have and stuff? So yeah, this is super nice for the exploratory phase. Cool, but what I would like to do now is here have a Fastify plugin. So let me actually go and just pull in some of these. So I have here my Fastify. And let me actually just, that's fine. Like we can just reuse this one here. We don't need a spec here. We can, I think, ignore some of this stuff because we don't know it right. Like we don't need it right now. So Fastify is being pulled in here. And this then gets exposed over here. So it just loads that file. So I'm curious now, if I go back to my app here, right now, so we just like have a root level root here. Let me just name this people. Because I'm curious, like, because obviously we don't have any folder structures. I'm wondering how the whole folder-based thing would behave. And then let's actually have npx and xserve here. Seems like this is watching, which is cool. I was just wondering right now whether this is actually doing also the watching as the Fastify CLI did. And so here we have hello API, 1, 2, 3, and if I refresh here, yeah, it does watching and recompilation, perfect. And so I wonder what would happen now if I just pull in my lib. And so whenever, like when I generated this library before, this modules folder, what also happened is there's some tsconfig path mapping. And so you can see this tsconfig path, like this, yeah, import scope if you want, points to that module. And so usually in a front-end app, you can, and here as well, because it's just TypeScript in the end, you can import from something like this. And so I'm wondering, because like right now we don't really have anything to import because that people function just registered root. Well, we have that function basically that is being exported. So we get root in here, right? Probably would want to name this like people, because this is like what is being exported, and this is like our people module, so it might make sense to have this named people. And then we need to load it. So I would want to activate this plugin and put it in here. So let me see how the whole thing happened here, how they did it. So he loads it via, like dynamically via that directory, via that Fastify register. But I wonder whether I can just do something like Fastify register people. Oh, CodePilot kind of saved me here. So then DP mentioned, so now I want to develop a plugin for JetBrains, or I heard wrong. No, you heard right, 100%. So there have actually been already, let me pull this over here. Like if you go to nx.dev and then you go to IDE or editor, I think, integrate with editors. This is basically the page, let me make it a bit bigger, how you can integrate NX with your like editor stuff. And right now there was like Visual Studio Code as a plugin, which is the NX console, which we have seen, which I use here. And there was always, well, this is just like for that. And there was always a WebStorm version. So actually 2 of them, but these were community plugins. So someone from the community just stepped up, actually a couple of years ago, 2 years ago or something. They're not new. And developed like an equivalent of NX console, but for WebStorm. Or IDEA in general, like the IDE basically. And those are pretty good. But like at some point, like we just didn't have the capacity to do it on our own. So we were super happy that they stepped up for that. But now that we work full-time on NX, which we didn't before, so since we got funding, we moved all of the people off consulting mostly. So full-time on NX and NX console. So now we can really invest. And WebStorm, we have a lot of fans internally at the NX team that use WebStorm. So big promoters. So we always wanted to have it. And so now we are actually doing, like we are implementing this, and we are collaborating with both of these community folks, because obviously what they did is super valuable, because like there's so many edge cases and stuff that you need to develop. So we wanted to pull them in, and we started collaborating with them, basically getting ideas and sharing stuff to get that going. So the first version will obviously be less than what you will have with these, because like we're just like getting ramped up basically and implementing the foundations of that WebZone plugin. But it should be ready pretty soon. So matter of, I don't know when the release date will be. I don't want to commit to it, otherwise people will not love me. And there's also a NeoVim plugin. So this is mostly I think it's at the language service level, so the LSP level. So you can just like have a language server that you can pull in, and it will give you auto completion in like NX.json and all those like project JSON files. And I think there's also a community member that started developing some sort of like UI for Vim, like similar to NX console, whatever UI in Vim means actually. But yeah, cool. So it looks like, at least like Copilot thinks this is a way that you could go. So let's see. Has no export members people. Let me see, didn't I? Oh, it's a default export. I'm so accustomed to have different ones. Actually, let me go in and just export this directly. So I have an export of people. This would go in here. Would have it here, and we can pull it in here and load it. So let's see now if I go to people. It won't be found, but that is because I have nested it a level deeper, because I didn't think of that you could do something like this, and it seems to work. So now you have live streaming, hide error, which is what we had. This is just a copy and paste from the people API. Right, and so if I refresh, like this is kind of streaming out of that. Perfect. So, so basically I can now define that and pull it in via that people function, which it does export. So it's very similar to what you would have in like a front-end setup with Nx, just that now we modularize and move all of our APIs and stuff, like all of our domain logics basically for the backend also into the submodules, which is great. And then we just pull them in. I guess like what would be interesting here is you could have some sort of dynamic loading based on some plugins. So you could even just have like some sort of set where you pull in all the plugins that you have and then load them in. But for now, I think that this is like good to go to understand, because now we can have just a second version of this. Let's say we have something like products, and this like now I can actually just do Nx generate. Let's say contacts directory module. So we'll get the same, and ideally we would want to generate. So my idea is that at some point, maybe even for the next release, we would have something like where we can generate here Fastify, and then have like not a library, but have an actual plugin that we can generate. So maybe even like just a library, and then in here just do right click, generate, Nx generate, plugin, Fastify plugin. That would scaffold out basically what we have in here, right? So you would have this one scaffolded out here. This would then obviously be called contacts. Contacts API here, and this remains the same. And so then we can just go to our app.ts file and just basically pull this in again, have this under contacts. So this is nice. I like the fact that we don't, we can have the folder-based structuring and folder-based routing, and also this one here. So we can just really configure it and pull this in. So there's nothing in our way why this wouldn't work. And obviously here we have the contacts as well. All right. And so now obviously if I go to contacts, it should work nicely. Cool. I like this. I like the simplicity of like just sticking it together. That was really easy. And in fact, like if we would have those generators, it would even be nicer because then we could just generate some of those plugins. But we'll see, because it depends also a lot of like how you want to structure that. So that's also why I want to experiment that a bit, and just like decided to do it live on stream so some people can chime in as well. How does it feel like? Does this feel right to have it like this, or would you want to have it different? Also from the perspective here, do you want to have it like have one plugin here, obviously per file probably, and just then group them here and export them? Stuff like that, basically, I'm trying to figure out how this looks like. So what do we get from this, by the way? All the Nx goodness, I guess. So for those not knowing, I can just then use the graph as well. And now, in theory, yeah, perfect. So now we have basically Nx graph working on top of this Fastify app. And we see we have our Fastify standalone app. Now the name here is not really representative. But then we would potentially have all our different modules people, modules contacts, and we can see the structure unfold of our backend as well, not just the front end code. So that's our main goal, right? So we can expand Nx beyond just front end coding, and you could just create your backend code as well. And what's the time? Let me see. All right, so probably gonna wrap up soon. But obviously you could have this now in a monorepo as well, right? So we could have like a monorepo, not just like a standalone setup, have Fastify installed there, and then have the front end app connect to that. And then we would see even an Nx graph, like both sides of this. So we'd see the backend code and potentially also how it integrates into the front end code, maybe even with something like TRPC or something, how things basically are type safe across the boundaries. Could actually be a nice next stream to integrate those two parts. And then obviously, yeah, what else? Like all the, if I run the tests, now obviously the tests won't work. But I could just run modules contacts. I could run the test for just the module contacts, which would now miserably break, obviously, because those pre-generated tests there don't do anything Fastify related. But they could now test just those single contact, like single plugins. I could run those individually, and all those things would be cached as well. Cool. Let me see the chat quickly. Yeah, like DanDP. Yeah, we definitely wanted to collab. That's a big thing I always want to do, kind of pull in the community. Because obviously, like now that we have the capacity and can do something of some of those things that they previously did, like developing like the community webstone plugin. And like now we can do it inside the Nx team, but we don't want to just like roll over what they have created. And it's actually a big help because like if you look at their plugins, they're pretty good. But obviously for them, they have like a difficult time of following up like what we changed and stuff. And so ideally we want to have them on board and just collaborate with us on that thing, especially as we go deeper into developing some of the existing UIs. We probably would want to reuse some of their stuff. For sure. Like we did something similar with like when we added Vite support to Nx, which as well, like before we didn't have that because just we didn't have capacity to maintain it as well. But then Vite got more important. We got some good relationships going with the Vite team. And so we started actually looking into it more. But there was already the NXX team. They do an amazing job. Like this is one of the some community contributors which develop like Nx plugins. And so they had the stencil CSS. I also have Solid as well React. They're also working, like one of their creators works now on a Vue plugin as well, which I want to test it out. Maybe I could do that actually live on stream to see how it looks like. It's still in beta version, but that's super great. And so when we kind of said like, hey, let's look into Vite, we kind of involved them, like brainstormed through like the difficulties that they had in setting up Vite support. And then developed our plugin. And I think like they're working on a transition, or there is already a transition. So if you now use the Vite project, I think there is some transitioning going on, or they're working on that basically, on how you can migrate from their plugin to ours that has been developed now. But that's a great part of open source. an XS6 one. It must be tough to just get an MVP to iterate from. What do you mean? Like which type of MVP? Like for what? For the Fastify support or for NX console? Cool. I think we got 10 minutes. So what I wanted to do is quickly see how this also looks like in a monorepo setup, which would actually be pretty simple. Because what I need to do here is just create a new NX workspace. Just to show you what this would be. Just like my org, because this would really be the organization I'm developing this with. And so let's have here integrated monorepo. I actually want to just have an empty one for now. So no plugins installed. Actually, let's have actually an integrated monorepo. Let's go with React. So we have the React stuff already there. So we have the React app front end. Shop app, do developer shop app. Here you can see now we have the Vite and WebEx support. So Vite is default, which I mentioned before. And so this creates now a React application scaffold with Vite. Oh yeah, the WebStorm NX console. Yeah, we have some really great engineers on the team, to be honest. Like John is the one that like really took NX console off the ground. So it made it really, really good. And so he's also into now WebStorm, helps with that, as well as Max, which joined us half a year ago. So have some great people working there. And I just saw a demo yesterday with already like in WebStorm, with already the whole screen, like this one here. So this one is already working, something like, I don't know, this form is already working. And so they actually just implemented it right now as a web view, which is kind of interesting because then you can share a lot of the stuff. Now what we want to do now is make it look more native to WebStorm. So you wouldn't want to have like it look ideally as like a VS Code port to WebStorm, right? So you want to have it like nice integrated, which is connected to more effort. And so we're trying to kind of make sure we can reuse as much stuff as we want, because otherwise we have to maintain like 2 plugins and kind of jump back and forth and make sure their feature parity is given. But there's already some stuff working, so it's looking pretty exciting. So the release shouldn't be that far away, actually. So let me have the workspace set up here. By the way, one thing we didn't look into in this setup, which might actually be interesting, is I actually chose to create a Docker file. So when I generated this Fastify app with NX, it already created a Docker file for me. So let me see what it does. So it actually creates us a dir, and then it copies in obviously like the compiled output into Fastify standalone. So I should be able to, let's see where we can run it, because there is a Docker build, which basically does just a Docker build command. So this is one of those run commands where you just run Docker build, gives it name Fastify standalone. Let's see. Oh, I don't have Docker engine running behind the scenes. So let's see. Let's fire that up. Oh, I get now. You mentioned like the sound is only on the left. I have to look into mixing that, because this is like how it's being mixed through the mixer I have here. It's a good point. I need to fix that, because normally when I do video recordings, it just exports. When I do the exporting, basically just like merge the 2 streams. That's nice. Sorry for that. But yeah, as mentioned, it's the first stream. So I totally expected those things to happen, even worse. Let me see, here's Docker up and running. Should be. Let's do a Docker build. Yeah, the plan is definitely to improve as I go with these streams. I actually enjoy it, to be honest. I'm curious like how this goes, because The hard part is the consistency, like stream every week, ideally twice a week, but like let's start small and expand from there. Cool, so the Docker container should have been created. So if I now use Docker run, let me actually see, I should have it somewhere. Fastify, how is it called? Fastify standalone. Let's go 3000. Yep, works. So now we're running the Docker container and our app is packaged in there. Nice. Interesting, it doesn't take the signal properly. So let's just go and stop it here. Cool, so what is our monorepo doing? Cool, this is created. So if I now open the Fastify monorepo, or my org, that's how I call it. Let's close here. You see now how my virtual screens duplicate as I keep going. This is an issue. I don't just have like a lot of tabs open. My main issue is having too many of these virtual screens open. Cool, so now we have the same thing, like we have a React setup here. Like this is a monorepo now. And what I would like to expand here, and we don't have, like I would want to stop basically in 10 minutes roughly. But I'm wondering whether we can have some setup going here where we have a React application and then we just want to add here our Fastify stuff. And so for that, I'm going to, the Node one is not installed. So let me just go here and say I install also the Node plugin, because that has the generator for the Node app, like the Fastify app that we have just seen. Because now I'm not starting from Fastify, but I'd rather add Fastify to some existing stuff. So there's some conflicting peer dependency stuff. That's probably due to how I published the thing locally, because it's still running off the local Verdasha server. I would expect this to be faster because it should be cached. But let's see. Because I think like one thing, like the main value you would get out of this one here, like having such a Fastify app set up in Nx, but it's a standalone, not a monorepo, would mostly be the generators and the modularity piece. So if we improve even the generators in the sense that you can easily create new plugins, like Fastify plugins, then this would be a really nice experience, I feel, because you would have the app here, which would mostly just some way bundle in all those plugins and register them. And then basically you have all those separate modules which you can then structure, even nest, like it's not just one level. Because since we're using the TypeScript path mappings here, you can literally have like as many levels as you want. So you could have here really a nice structure where you have context and you might have different entry points, even plugins for just the context API. So then DP learning working in public is a pretty interesting thing to watch and participate in. Yeah, nice. Like, hope you enjoy it. Like, I definitely do. And it's also like an excuse to stick and do it actually, because if you're just like doing it on your own, you might just procrastinate, not actually go and look into it. Plus you have something to go back and like refer to if someone asks in the future. That's my main thing. Cool. So now we have the monorepo and we have Node installed. So now we should also have the generator for Node. Yep. So we can use the application. And again here, let's call this just API. So this is our Fastify based API. And now I should be, so if I don't specify in a directory and I have an apps folder, it should go by default into that apps folder, which is not, which I think it's like makes sense because this is our app, our backend app. There's the bundler, which I could choose between ESBuild and Webpack. Again, like if you want a bundle, maybe we should have an option where I don't want a bundle. And so we just like transpile, but then copy the single files there, which could be a nice trade-off, like in the sense of for those people wanting to bundle and those that don't. And this is the one that I would want to go with. I wonder what is none, what it would generate. What would be the default? Would that be an Express app? I don't see it here in the output, so we need to check. But anyways, we want to have a Fastify app here. What is the front-end project? Oh, this is actually a cool thing. I didn't even think about this one. So now that I have the React application created and have it already in here, I can go and choose the front-end project. And I completely forgot that we had this option. So I should be able to say shop app. I'm not sure whether... Yep, exactly. So you can see if I add this one here, it finds the app's shop app one, and it creates a proxy config, and we will see in a minute what this is. And then like it updates the project JSON. The project JSON, for those not knowing Nx, this is kind of like the package JSON, but since we're using TypeScript path mappings, we don't necessarily have a package JSON in here. Like you could create one, but this is basically a more like evolved, how to say, like an expanded version of the NPM scripts, right? Like these are our scripts, but they have much more metadata attached, and this is like a JSON file, as you can see. So Nx can really easily parse this and read it. We can even provide like auto completion via the NX console and stuff. So it's very convenient rather than having like sticking, especially if your workspace grows, rather than sticking things together like a whole huge NPM script that you kind of just concatenate, which is really hard to parse afterwards. This is much easier because like here you have just the logic that runs behind the scenes, and this is usually a plugin, unless you want to have, let me go back to our standalone setup, such a run command where you can really, like this is like an easy wrapper for having a new script into the project JSON, but that just runs a command, right? Like for Docker, for instance, we don't have a plugin that does Docker stuff. I think there's a community one for Nx, like a community plugin, but I didn't check that out yet. But basically this is just for running a single command, which is pretty easy. But if it's more evolved, you can see here there's an actual function behind the scenes, and then there's options that you can pass to it, and even like different modes in the case like if you want to provide different configurations of how you want to build this. But basically the cool part here is now, since we gave it that shop app, it would go and update that project JSON, and we will see in a minute what it does. The rest I think is fine, so let me just run this, and then let's see how this works. My idea is also, hopefully I can fix the audio later, because like my idea is also, this is being recorded at the same time. So I'm going to upload this also to my YouTube channel, where I haven't been super active. I've been more active in the Nx YouTube channel. So shameless plug, if you want to check that out, just go to youtube.com Nx DevTools. So this is where a lot of the stuff will also be published. So this is where that would be. But I will upload it to my own YouTube channel later. More probably cut down and edited part. So it's much quicker to just have the key parts in there. But that is kind of my idea. If this works out nicely and if the quality is matching to what I want. Cool, so we have the shop app now and our API, and we see this proxy config. So this is just API, is just our Fastify app. There's nothing different than what we had before. So you see here the message hello API. We can run it, but like what is interesting here is we have this project proxy config, and this points to basically an endpoint with localhost 333. Which, to be honest, I need to check whether that's actually where Fastify runs, because I think we configured, or Fastify by default will be in 3000. This could actually be a bug. Let me see. But actually, before we go ahead, so this proxy would just proxy everything that goes to /API to our backend server here. And so this is very neat then, because you can then run your shop app, run your API backend, and then have the two work together very easily and nicely. So what has happened here? Oh, this just passes that proxy config to our local serve function here. So that it is actually being read. So that's what happened here in terms of the setup. We could even run both of them together. Let me see whether there has been added a script where we just boot up in one single command the backend and the front end. doesn't seem to be the case now. So let me just run them separately. So I would run an Nx on my API. And now I'm curious where this actually loads. So this loads on localhost 3000 as I expected, which means our proxy actually is wrong there. So we spotted the bug. See, this already was useful. Because now if, for instance, if I go and run Nx serve my shop app, this loads on a proxy, it loads the application here at 400. But at the same time, if I go to /API, it should proxy this through. But now obviously it gets an error because at 3,323 basically there is no API running. So let's configure this and just change this to 3,000. Serve this up again. And now it should work. It's not found, but at least like it reaches our server. Let me see, what does our API here say? Oh, I think that this forwards to /API on the server, so we would have to have something like this as well. This might need some fine tuning there in terms of how this is being set up, but basically, yeah. So it just like takes the path and then forwards everything to the next port. Like I think you could just configure that in that proxy JSON. But the cool part here, as you can see, now you can kind of combine. Hey, bye, Michael. Hope to see you next time. But now you can see like we have both parts combined, right? We have the front-end app now inside here. We have the Fastify app running, and both of them are connected. So the development experience is pretty nice, I feel. But the cool thing is now we can modularize them in the very same fashion. So we could have around here even a folder. Let's say we have like contacts, which has libraries for the front-end app, as well as plugins for Fastify. Like you could really literally like structure it as you want it in the end. Then DP, cool feature. I was happy that Nest.js generator. Yeah, that was actually super cool. I feel like this is pretty cool, although it's not often seen because like you just see it like initially when you generate it. I don't know whether there is the possibility to say I want to generate just a proxy. I think that could be useful, where you have the app set up, but then you want to connect them later. So just generate a proxy file for me. Although, I mean, granted, it is not too difficult, right? Like it's really literally like if you look up, this is like. If you look this up in the docs in like Vite or like Webpack, depending on what you're using, it should be pretty straightforward to set it up. It's a couple of files and configure that. But yeah, I think that's it. So we explored Fastify CLI. There's definitely some points there which are open, like the decorators. So what are those? So why I'm interested there, like because we might want to generate them as well. There was a point where we might want to rename the main TS to server TS. I feel like it makes more sense to me to have something like server, like this is the server app basically that runs. Plus there was another point, which I have seen during the stream. There was about not the decorators. Oh, the actual like the Fastify. How do they call it? Sensible, which is like basically the default Fastify plugins that are being set up. And so this is one of them. And so the question is like, should like when Nx generates some of these, should it include that as well and set that up by default? Cool. Yep, seeing how app like authentication would work on a sim would be nice. Yeah, totally. I mean, we could build a full app out of this, and maybe we could like right now. My main goal was like just to explore like how Nx and Fastify work together. Simply because like I will create some more content around this, like in like upcoming weeks. So you will see more like polished videos. So this is just like my publicly streamed exploration phase. And then you would see more polished videos on our YouTube channel on the Nx Dev Tools, which I shared earlier, about how you can integrate both of them. But it would be nice actually to have like a full session on this. I could actually ask I could ask Zach for that, because Zach is my teammate at Nx. And he does a lot of the live streams. So if you go to our YouTube channel, you see the live streams where he actually goes, like here, for instance, he went through like TRCP coding with someone from the TRCP core team and stuff like that. And there's some more coming up. Here he kind of chatted with the Learner team about latest stuff and coded like publishing Learner packages. So that could actually be a good stream on the NX channel directly. So once we have like the Fastify support nailed in NX, or at least like a good first version, we could do a stream where we code through some of the stuff, like creating like an authentication, like a full backend, a front app, connecting that to a Fastify application and doing some auth stuff and like how you would do that. So actually a good idea. If you want to also check out someone like Matteo Collina, I mentioned him initially, like he's the one that created Fastify. So definitely check him out. Like he, I think it's this one here. He has a newsletter and he also has a Twitch stream. So let me see where he actually codes through Fastify in particular. So this is the one. Oh, I actually didn't follow him. Let's do a follow here. Where he just recently starts to code through a Fastify setup and how that could look like. So that would be definitely something you want to check out if you're particularly interested in the Fastify. Cool. Yeah, I think like almost 1.5 hours. It's a good time to stop here. I think I did everything I wanted to achieve in this stream today, and hopefully, or I will definitely line up some other stream next week. Yeah, but this stream is very reminiscent of when I went through NX Gettings. Cool. Yeah, definitely check by next time. If you wanna, I stream or I announce most of the stuff on Twitter. So this would be the best place where to check that and don't miss it whenever anything comes up. Oh, obviously, like subscribe on Twitch here, you will get a notification whenever I go live. But ideally, around this time next week on Tuesday, I'm planning to have a next one. And if this works out nicely, potentially even on Thursdays as well. But as mentioned, first stream, I'll go and fix and check how I can fix the audio stuff. So sorry for that. And then next time should be better. All right. Thanks. Bye, folks.